of the Persian Empire descend upon you.
Threaten my people with slavery. It's Sparta!
Last breath to defend it!
Spartans! Tonight, we dine in hell! Give them nothing! Take from them everything!
The film is an epic historical action movie directed by Zack Snyder, based on Frank Miller's 1998 graphic novel of the same name. It stars Gerard Butler as King Leonidas, Lena Headey as Queen Gorgo, and Rodrigo Santoro as the Persian god King Xerxes. This analysis continues with a plot summary. The film dramatizes the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE, where 300 Spartan soldiers led by King Leonidas made a legendary last stand against the massive invading Persian army under Xerxes' I. The narrative is framed as a story told by Dilios, a Spartan survivor. The narrative structure is examined here. The film uses an unreliable narrator device, as Dilios recounts the battle to inspire his fellow Spartans before the final confrontation at Plataea. This framing allows the story to be exaggerated, mythologized, and filtered through Spartan propaganda. Leonidas's defiance of Spartan law is crucial. He chooses to ignore the corrupt ephors, the priests who have been bribed by the Persians and who declare that the Carnean festival forbids Sparta from going to war. This defiance establishes him as a decisive, anti-democratic strong leader. The geographical setting is the Hot Gates or Thermopylae, a narrow coastal pass. The Spartans deliberately choose this terrain to neutralize the Persians' overwhelming numerical advantage. The pass funnels the massive Persian army into a confined space where their numbers become a liability. The battle unfolds over 3 days in the film's chronology. On the first day, the Spartans demonstrate their superior fighting techniques, including the famous phalanx formation with long spears and interlocking shields. They massacre wave after wave of Persian infantry with minimal losses. The second day introduces the Persian Immortals, an elite fighting force. In the film, they are depicted as masked, almost supernatural creatures, contrasting with historical accounts where they were simply well-trained heavy infantry. The Spartans defeat them as well, showcasing their tactical superiority. The betrayal by Ephialtes is the turning point. He is portrayed as a deformed Spartan outcast whose parents fled Sparta to avoid his execution for physical imperfection. Desperate to redeem his family's honor, he offers to show the Persians a hidden mountain path that flanks the hot gates. Leonidas rejects Ephialtes' request to fight, not out of cruelty, but because the man's deformed arm cannot lift his shield high enough to maintain the phalanx formation. This rejection is a tragic consequence of Spartan eugenics and military rigidity. Ephialtes then betrays them to Xerxes. The production context is essential for understanding the film. It is not an adaptation of the historical battle, but of Frank Miller's 1998 graphic novel. Miller conceived 300 as a tribute to the 1962 film, The 300 Spartans, which he saw as a child, deliberately creating a mythologized account. Zack Snyder, then a relatively unknown director with only the 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake to his credit, was determined to remain slavishly faithful to Miller's visual language. Unlike conventional historical epics that strive for realism, Snyder aimed to create a graphic novel come to life. The production process was revolutionary for its time. The film was shot primarily on blue-screen soundstages in Montreal over approximately 60 days. Nearly every one of the film's 1,300 shots involved visual effects, with environments, backgrounds, and even some props added digitally in post-production. The budget was a relatively modest $65 million. By avoiding the expensive pursuit of photorealism, the film achieved its epic scale for a fraction of conventional costs. This demonstrated that visual effects-heavy films could be made efficiently without requiring a $200 million budget. The physical toll on the actors was notorious. Gerard Butler and the cast underwent intense physical training to achieve the sculpted physiques seen on screen. Butler later recalled the filming process as brutal and chaotic, with numerous cast members sustaining injuries during the demanding shoot. The visual aesthetic of the film was its most revolutionary aspect. The filmmakers developed a distinctive style combining desaturated sepia tones with selective color retention, notably for blood and Spartan capes. This created a painterly, hyper-stylized look unlike any previous historical film. Extreme contrast was a hallmark of the film's look. Visual effects artists called this the crush, achieved by clipping levels to boost highlights and deepen shadows. The result was a gritty, almost metallic texture that gave every frame a graphic novel quality. The backgrounds were created using an innovative technique. Skies were made by layering photographs of clouds with scanned coffee stains and ink splotches to create an organic, watercolor effect. This approach rejected photorealism in favor of expressive, handcrafted artificiality. Polarized lighting was another distinctive feature. The frame is typically dark at the top and soft and light at the skyline, creating a dramatic, theatrical atmosphere. This unnatural lighting constantly reminds viewers that they are watching a stylized myth rather than historical reality. Visual effects supervisor Chris Watts noted that the film did not do groundbreaking visual effects. Instead, the achievement was in the creative application of existing techniques. The film proved that stylized, non-photorealistic VFX could be both artistically valid and commercially successful. Creating the stylized look presented unique difficulties. Watts explained that telling artists to make something look real is straightforward, but saying, "make it look like this comic book," invites a million different interpretations. This ambiguity required constant creative problem-solving throughout production. Not all VFX professionals were impressed with the approach. Oscar-nominated visual effects supervisor Boyd Shermis noted that lighting style, direction, and exposures did not appear to be given strong consideration in the overall look. He was surprised that blue-screen exposures were not a higher priority. The film's critical reception was sharply divided. According to Rotten Tomatoes, the critical consensus described the film as offering mighty thrills, Spartan plot. This succinct summary captures the divide between those who admired the visuals and those who criticized the narrative shallowness. The film holds a 60% Tomatometer score, indicating mixed but slightly positive reviews from professional critics. However, audience scores have consistently been much higher, revealing a significant gap between critical skepticism and popular enthusiasm that defines the film's reception. Critics who admired the film praised its visual audacity, unprecedented distinctive look, kinetic and visceral action sequences, and faithful adaptation of Miller's vision. For many, the film succeeded precisely because it rejected historical realism in favor of pure cinematic spectacle. Detractors identified significant issues, including narrative shallowness. One IMDb review argued that characterization was virtually absent, describing a collection of cardboard cutouts masquerading as actors, where one-dimensional heroes combat flat antagonists. The real battle was historically complex and interesting. Overstylization was another common criticism. Reviewers complained that the slow-motion fighting was cool the first time, but wore thin very quickly. The digital blood was described as distracting and cheesy, undermining any sense of genuine stakes or violence. French audiences on Allociné have been particularly harsh, with the film averaging only 3.9 out of 10 from over 60,000 ratings. This represents one of the most negative national receptions the film received anywhere in the world, reflecting deep cultural and political objections. French critics attacked the film for fascist undertones. One reviewer called it an insult to Persian civilization and compared its ideology to Nazi propaganda. The critic argued the film presents all the characteristics of fascist thought: glorification of force and demonization of others. The depiction of Persians as monstrous, decadent, and racially diverse has been widely criticized as Orientalist and racist. The film presents sub-Saharan African and Asian warriors as grotesque adversaries, contrasting them with pale, sculpted European heroes in a problematic racial binary. The timing of the film's release added uncomfortable contemporary resonance. Frank Miller's graphic novel was written in 1998, before the intensification of Western Iranian tensions, but the film arrived during the George W. Bush administration's axis of evil rhetoric, giving these depictions contemporary political weight. Gerard Butler's performance as Leonidas deserves detailed analysis. Before this film, Butler was best known for playing the Phantom in Joel Schumacher's 2004 film adaptation of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. He was not an obvious choice to play a Spartan king. Butler's Leonidas is defined by physical presence, vocal authority, and limited emotional range. The role demanded not just a muscular physique, but a commanding bearing. His delivery of lines like "This is Sparta," followed by the infamous kick, became instantly iconic. Reviews of Butler's performance were generally positive. One IMDb user noted that they loved his commanding performance as the Spartan king, stating that he elevates the movie by leaps and bounds. The character overshadowed the actor himself in the public imagination. John Podhoretz made a provocative argument about the film's lack of stars. Because the film had no major stars, Snyder had complete creative freedom. A Brad Pitt could not have played this Leonidas, as the part would have been altered to give the star a speech bemoaning war's tragic cost. Butler's commitment to the role came at a physical cost. He entered production already beaten up from previous films and sustained additional injuries during this shoot. The actor has since described a career marked by on-set accidents, including hypothermia, near drowning, and being struck by a car. The historical accuracy of the film is a major point of contention. The actual Battle of Thermopylae involved approximately 7,000 Greek soldiers, not 300 Spartans alone. The Spartans contributed 300 elite warriors, but they were joined by contingents from Thespiae, Thebes, and other Greek city-states. The battle lasted 3 days historically, with the Spartans and Thespians making a final stand after the betrayal by Ephialtes. The historical Ephialtes was a Greek from Trachis, not a deformed Spartan outcast. The film invented this backstory for dramatic purposes. Xerxes is depicted as a 7-foot god-king covered in piercings and jewelry. The historical Xerxes was a normal-sized Persian king. The film transforms him into an androgynous, almost supernatural figure to emphasize the contrast between Spartan discipline and Persian decadence. The Persian immortals are shown as masked, monstrous warriors with dark skin and metal faces. Historically, they were elite heavy infantry who received their name because their unit was always kept at exactly 10,000 men, with immediate replacements for any casualty. The film includes rhinoceroses and elephants in the Persian army. Neither animal was present at the historical Battle of Thermopylae. These additions serve the film's visual spectacle and its project of depicting the Persian army as an unnatural, grotesque horde. One of the most persistent criticisms concerns the film's central theme of freedom. Historical Sparta was a militaristic, oligarchic society that maintained dominance over a helot population that outnumbered citizens by approximately 7-1. The Spartans were fighting to preserve their own slave-owning society. The film's narrative presents the Spartans as defenders of liberty against Persian tyranny. One academic reviewer called this propaganda for its complete erasure of Spartan slavery. The freedom the Spartans defend is freedom for themselves to continue enslaving others. To the film's credit, It correctly includes the Carnean festival as a plot device. This was a historical religious observance that prevented the full Spartan army from marching to Thermopylae. It explains why Leonidas could only take 300 soldiers rather than the full Spartan military. Snyder never claimed historical accuracy for the film. His goal was to adapt Miller's graphic novel, which was itself a mythologized, intentionally exaggerated account. Slavish attention to historical detail was never the film's objective, as the Rotten Tomatoes consensus noted. The most prominent and controversial theme in the film is the framing of the Greco-Persian Wars as a civilizational struggle. The film explicitly contrasts Spartan discipline, rationality, and martial virtue with Persian decadence, mysticism, and monstrous otherness in a binary opposition. John Podhoretz wrote in 2007 that telling the story of Thermopylae inevitably means telling a story of Western civilization taking a stand against rampaging barbarians from the East. He argued that this aspect of the film, combined with its celebration of bloodthirsty war, explained its galvanizing effect on audiences. The film arrived at a moment when the United States was deeply engaged in Iraq and Afghanistan. The narrative of a small, heroic Western force resisting a massive, threatening Eastern invasion resonated with contemporary anxieties and nationalist sentiments, whether intentionally or not. Kyle Smith of the New York Post argued against direct political parallels, noting that Miller's graphic novel was completed before September 11th. However, Podhoretz countered that while Miller foresaw no parallel, the audience seeing the film in 2007 was responding viscerally to contemporary events. The film has been repeatedly accused of embracing fascist visual and narrative tropes. These include the cult of the warrior body with hypermasculine sculpted physiques presented as the ideal, militarism as virtue, the strong leader figure, and the dehumanization of enemies as subhuman or monstrous. French critics were particularly vocal about the fascist aesthetics. One Allociné reviewer wrote that Snyder and Miller should have been born 70 years earlier, so they could present their film to Goebbels. This extreme criticism reflects deep European discomfort with the film's ideological framing. Queen Gorgo, played by Lena Headey, provides the film's sole significant female role. While Sparta historically granted women more freedom than other Greek city-states, allowing them to own land and receive physical training, the film's Gorgo is largely confined to a supporting role. Gorgo's primary function is to embody Spartan virtues by telling Leonidas to return with his shield or on it. She also navigates the corrupt political system in Sparta while her husband fights. One academic review noted that her part in the movie is greatly exaggerated in terms of political influence. The film adds a controversial subplot where Gorgo is nearly raped by the traitorous politician Theron. Critics have called this narrative choice gratuitous and exploitative. It uses sexual violence against the sole female character as a plot device to motivate political revenge. The film presents an extraordinarily specific vision of masculine perfection. The Spartans are uniformly muscular, oiled, and semi-nude, their bodies displayed for the camera. One critic noted that the buff semi-naked Spartans with thrusting spears might appeal to viewers especially if that is their particular interest. The celebration of the male body in the film has led to complicated readings. It is simultaneously hypermasculine and homoerotic, a tension the film never acknowledges or resolves. The camera lingers on sculpted male bodies in ways that exceed conventional action film framing. The film was a financial phenomenon that defied industry expectations. It achieved an opening weekend of $70.9 million, a March record at the time. The domestic total reached $210.6 million, with an international total of $245.6 million, for a worldwide total of $456.1 million. The return on investment was approximately 7 times the production budget of $65 million. The film achieved the third best opening ever for an R-rated film at the time, behind only The Matrix Reloaded and The Passion of the Christ. As the Washington Examiner noted, the film broke every rule Hollywood believed about making a successful action picture. It had no major stars, an unknown director, and R rating limiting the teenage audience, and was based on a niche graphic novel set in ancient Greece. Producer Mark Canton noted that the stylized violence avoided the yuck factor. The blood was so artificial and digital that it did not produce the visceral revulsion of realistic gore. This allowed the R rating to be less of a commercial liability than usual. Director Zack Snyder was surprised by the film's appeal to women. He stated that women loved the movie much more than the production had ever thought possible. This broader demographic appeal, beyond the expected young male audience, helped drive the film's massive box office success. The film demonstrated that stylized, non-photorealistic visual effects could be commercially viable. Oscar-winning VFX supervisor Rob Legato, known for Titanic and Avatar, said the film expanded the palette of filmmaking by offering a hybrid between photorealism and animation appropriate for certain subject matter. The film's success encouraged other directors to pursue blue-screen-heavy productions. Roland Emmerich, then completing 10,000 BC, noted that this film set a new standard for effects-driven filmmaking. The approach allowed directors with strong visual imaginations but limited budgets to realize epic visions. John Podhoretz argued that the film might be revolutionary because it liberated movie makers from the Hollywood power structure, where stars hold the cards. By relegating actors to a secondary status behind visual effects, the film proved that the story is king and that clear moral conflicts could succeed without A-list talent. The film's visual style, characterized by high contrast, desaturation, and selective color, influenced advertising, music videos, and subsequent films. The crushed look became a common aesthetic in the late 2000s and early 2010s, appearing in everything from video games to perfume commercials. The film's political and racial depictions have aged poorly for many viewers. As contemporary streaming audiences rediscover the film, debates about its Orientalism, fascist aesthetics, and historical distortions continue. The film has become a case study in how visual style can serve problematic ideological content. The sequel, 300, Rise of an Empire, was released in 2014, directed by Noam Murrow. It attempted to replicate the original's success by focusing on the simultaneous naval battle of Artemisium. While commercially successful with $337 million worldwide, it lacked the original's cultural impact and received weaker reviews. The film is a work defined by contradictions. It is simultaneously visually revolutionary and narratively shallow, commercially triumphant and critically divisive, historically irresponsible and mythologically powerful, celebrated for its aesthetics and condemned for its politics. Butler's performance as Leonidas remains the film's dramatic anchor. In a production where actors were secondary to visual effects, his commanding presence and vocal authority gave the Spartans their emotional power. The physical toll he endured exemplifies the commitment required to bring this vision to screen. The film's greatest achievement may also be its greatest liability. It successfully transformed a complex historical event into a simple, powerful myth. For millions of viewers, this film is Thermopylae, the image of 300 Spartans making a heroic last stand against impossible odds. The historical reality of 7,000 Greek allies, Spartan slavery, and a more nuanced Persian empire has been largely overwritten by Snyder and Miller's vision. The film has become the primary cultural reference point for the battle, displacing more accurate historical accounts in the popular imagination. Nearly 2 decades after its release, the film remains a cultural touchstone. Its dialogue, including "This is Sparta" and "Tonight we dine in hell," has entered the lexicon. Its visual style influenced a generation of filmmakers. Its political controversies continue to provoke discussion about art, ideology, and historical representation. One critic wrote in 2007 that the lasting influence of this product would be slight. This prediction has proven incorrect. The film endures as a spectacle, a controversy, and a landmark in the evolution of Hollywood visual effects. It is a film that cannot be ignored, whether admired or despised. The film's treatment of disability through the character of Ephialtes deserves specific attention. The deformed Spartan outcast is portrayed as pitiable but also monstrous, his physical imperfection leading directly to treachery. This framing reinforces Spartan eugenics rather than critiquing them. The film never questions the Spartan practice of exposing defective infants to die. Instead, it presents this practice as a harsh but necessary aspect of their warrior culture. Ephialtes' parents are shown as weak for fleeing rather than submitting to this infanticide. The film's color palette carries ideological weight. The Spartans are bathed in warm, golden light, suggesting nobility and natural virtue. The Persians are associated with darkness, unnatural colors, and excessive ornamentation. This visual coding reinforces the film's moral binary. The film uses slow motion strategically to emphasize moments of heroic violence. When a Spartan kills a Persian, the action often slows down, allowing the viewer to appreciate the physical artistry of the kill. Persian deaths are spectacle. Spartan deaths are tragedy. The film uses slow motion strategically to emphasize moments of heroic violence. When a Spartan kills a Persian, the action often slows down, allowing the viewer to appreciate the physical artistry of the kill. Persian deaths are spectacle. Spartan deaths are tragedy. The film's sound design is equally deliberate. The clash of Spartan shields produces a resonant, almost musical tone. Persian weapons and creatures produce discordant, unnatural sounds. This auditory contrast reinforces the visual and thematic oppositions at the film's core. The film's depiction of Spartan phalanx warfare is stylized but recognizable. The interlocking shields and coordinated spear thrusts reflect historical accounts of Greek hoplite warfare. However, the film exaggerates the Spartans' individual fighting ability, showing them breaking formation frequently for dramatic solo kills. The historical Spartans were known for their laconic speech, delivering brief, memorable lines. The film honors this tradition with lines like, "Then we will fight in the shade." This famous response to the news that Persian arrows would blot out the sun is attributed to the Spartan Dionysus historically. The film's narrator Dilios survives the battle because Leonidas orders him to return to Sparta. This historical license allows the film to have its narrator and its heroic sacrifice simultaneously. Dilios' survival also mirrors the historical role of survivors in spreading the Thermopylae legend. The film's final scene shows Dilios inspiring the Spartan army before the Battle of Plataea. This battle historically defeated the Persians and ended the second invasion of Greece. The film thus ends not with defeat, but with the promise of eventual victory, transforming Thermopylae into a prologue. The film's treatment of the Arcadian allies is revealing. The Arcadians are shown as reluctant, less capable warriors who question Leonidas' leadership. When Leonidas dismisses them before the final stand, the film validates his contempt for anyone who does not share Spartan military values. The film has been analyzed as a text about the war on terror by numerous scholars. The Persians use stealth, deception, and unconventional tactics. They rely on overwhelming numbers and expendable troops. These characteristics mirror contemporary Western depictions of terrorist organizations and non-Western armies. The film's release on DVD and Blu-ray was equally successful. The home video market allowed the film to reach an even wider audience, and its visual style was often used to demonstrate the capabilities of high-definition home theater systems. The disc sales added substantially to the film's profitability. The film has been parodied extensively in popular culture. The "This is Sparta" kick has been referenced in countless television shows, video games, and internet memes. This parody reflects the film's penetration into the cultural consciousness while also gently mocking its earnestness. The film's portrayal of oracles and mysticism reflects ancient Greek religious beliefs. The oracle at Delphi, represented by a young woman writhing in a trance, historically advised the Spartans. However, the film depicts the Ephesus as corrupt and the oracle as manipulated, critiquing religious authority. The film's depiction of Spartan weaponry is relatively accurate. The Dori spear, Xiphos short sword, Aspi's shield, and Corinthian helmet are all historically appropriate. The film's stylized presentation makes these weapons seem almost supernatural, but their basic design reflects historical artifacts. The film's treatment of Spartan armor is deliberately selective. The Spartans wear little armor beyond helmet, greaves, and shield, exposing their sculpted torsos. Historically, Spartan hoplites wore bronze breastplates. The film sacrifices historical accuracy for visual display of male bodies. The film's depiction of the Persian navy and the storm that destroyed part of it is mentioned briefly. This references the historical storm at Cape Artemisium that damaged the Persian fleet, contributing to their eventual defeat. The film uses this to suggest divine favor for the Greeks. The film's final image of Leonidas' body being carried away by his soldiers is significant. The Spartans historically retrieved the bodies of their dead after battles when possible. This small act of humanity amid the slaughter provides a moment of pathos before the film's triumphant conclusion. The film has been used as a teaching tool in film studies courses precisely because of its problematic aspects. It offers a clear example of how visual style, narrative framing, and historical adaptation can serve ideological purposes. The film rewards close analysis even when that analysis is critical. The film's legacy includes influencing the visual language of the 300 aesthetic in video games. Games like God of War and Rise, Son of Rome adopted similar high-contrast, desaturated visuals and slow-motion combat executions. The film helped define how antiquity is visualized in digital media. The film's controversial reception in Iran was predictably negative. The Iranian government condemned the film as an insult to Persian history and culture. The film was banned in Iran, and some Iranian critics produced response films and artworks challenging its depiction of their ancestors. The film's depiction of Xerxes as androgynous has been analyzed as a homophobic coding of the Persian enemy. By presenting the Persian king as sexually ambiguous and adorned with piercings and jewelry, the film contrasts him with the hyper-masculine, disciplined Spartan warriors in a traditional gender binary. The film's treatment of the Persian immortals includes their depiction as carrying paired swords resembling Japanese weapons. This anachronistic detail reflects the film's broader project of presenting the Persian army as a monstrous, composite other, drawing on multiple non-Western cultures. The film's dialogue has been analyzed for its use of contemporary military language. Leonidas speaks of holding ground, of tactical advantages, of the enemy's weakness. This language makes the ancient battle legible to modern audiences familiar with military terminology from contemporary conflicts. The film's box office success led to a wave of historical action films with similar stylized visuals. Clash of the Titans, Immortals, and Pompeii all attempted to replicate the formula with varying degrees of success. None achieved the same cultural impact or profitability. The film's influence extends to television, with series like Spartacus, Blood and Sand adopting similar visual stylization for their depictions of antiquity. The use of blue-screen environments, slow-motion violence, and desaturated color grading became standard for the genre in the late 2000s. That the film's dialogue has been analyzed for its use of contemporary military language. Leonidas speaks of holding ground, of tactical advantages, of the enemy's weakness. This language makes the ancient battle legible to modern audiences familiar with military terminology from contemporary conflicts. The film's box office success led to a wave of historical action films with similar stylized visuals. Clash of the Titans, Immortals, and Pompeii all attempted to replicate the formula with varying degrees of success. None achieved the same cultural impact or profitability. The film's influence extends to television, with series like Spartacus, Blood and Sand adopting similar visual stylization for their depictions of antiquity. The use of blue-screen environments, slow-motion violence, and desaturated color grading became standard for the genre in the late 2000s. That the film's production design, including the costumes of the Persians, drew on multiple historical sources. The depiction of Persian court dress reflects Achaemenid art, though exaggerated. The monstrous creatures, including the giant warriors and the rhino, are pure fantasy inventions. The film's running time of approximately 117 minutes is relatively short for an epic. This brevity reflects the film's origin in a graphic novel of limited length. The film does not overstay its welcome, moving efficiently from setup to battle to tragic conclusion without extended subplots. The film's lack of characterization beyond the Spartans is a deliberate choice. The Persians are not individuals but a faceless mass. This dehumanization serves the film's project of presenting the battle as a clash between Western heroes and Eastern hordes rather than between human beings. The film's final analysis must acknowledge its status as a product of its time. The post-9/11 context, the rise of the War on Terror, and the popularity of stylized action cinema all contributed to its success. A film made today might receive even more criticism for its racial and political depictions. The film remains essential viewing for anyone interested in the relationship between cinema and ideology. It demonstrates how visual style can serve political content, how historical adaptation can distort the past, and how popular entertainment can become a site of genuine cultural controversy. It is a film that rewards serious critical attention. The film's opening sequence, which depicts the birth and brutal upbringing of Leonidas, establishes the eugenic logic of Spartan society from the first frames, showing the inspection of newborn infants by Spartan elders who decide which children are worthy to live, and the young Leonidas surviving a harsh wilderness trial that involves fighting wolves and enduring extreme weather, all of which primes the audience to accept the film's violent value system without questioning its moral implications. And this sequence was added by Snyder to expand on Miller's graphic novel by providing visual context for Spartan warrior culture. Yet it also serves to naturalize the idea that physical perfection and martial ability are inherent markers of human worth. a theme that will recur throughout the narrative whenever the Spartans encounter physically different or disabled characters, and the young actor who plays the child Leonidas underwent physical training almost as intense as the adult cast to convincingly portray the character's early discipline, while the cinematography during these flashback sequences uses a slightly different color palette with more natural tones to distinguish memory from the main narrative's stylized present. And the voiceover by Dilios explains that only the strongest children are allowed to survive in Sparta, a claim that the film presents as factual rather than as the ideological position of a specific culture. And this framing choice reveals the film's underlying endorsement of Spartan values despite its ostensibly neutral presentation of historical events. And the sequence ends with Leonidas returning to Sparta as a young man, having proven his worth through violence and endurance, and ready to claim his place among the warrior elite. The character of Dilios as the narrator deserves deeper examination because his role shapes how the audience perceives every event in the film, as he is not a neutral observer, but a committed Spartan patriot who explicitly states his intention to inspire future generations with the story of the 300. And this narrative framing means that everything the audience sees is filtered through his memory and his rhetorical purpose, which explains the exaggerated, mythologized quality of the battle sequences, the demonization of the Persians, and the heroic elevation of the Spartans. And the film never provides an alternative perspective that might challenge Dilios' account, such as a Persian narrator or even a skeptical Greek from another city-state. And this absence of counter-narrative is a deliberate artistic choice that aligns the film's structure with its ideological content, making the audience complicit in the creation of Spartan mythology and David Wenham's performance. As Dilios is carefully calibrated to convey both emotional investment and rhetorical control, as his voice shifts from trembling reverence to booming authority depending on the needs of the scene, and the film's final shot returns to Dilios leading the charge at Plataea, completing the narrative circle, and suggesting that his story has successfully inspired the Spartan army to victory. And this framing device is one of the film's most sophisticated elements because it acknowledges its own status as propaganda, while simultaneously asking the audience to accept that propaganda as truth, and literary critics have compared this technique to the unreliable narrators of classical epic poetry, particularly Homer's Odyssey, where the hero's account of his adventures is accepted by the audience despite obvious exaggerations and self-serving omissions. The production's use of blue screen technology required the actors to perform in isolation from one another for many scenes, with Gerard Butler later describing the experience as profoundly alienating because he would be fighting against a tennis ball on a stick rather than an actual Persian warrior. And the actors playing the Persian army were often added digitally in post-production, meaning the Spartan performers had to imagine the scale and intensity of the force they were resisting. And this technical constraint paradoxically enhanced the film's aesthetic because it forced the actors to convey emotion and physical effort without the usual cues provided by real combatants. And the visual effects team developed a proprietary software tool to manage the thousands of digital soldiers that populate the Persian army, creating algorithms that could generate individual variations in movement and appearance to avoid the unnatural uniformity that plagued earlier crowd simulation. Technology and the film's famous slow-motion sequences were achieved using a combination of high-speed cameras and digital interpolation, with Snyder insisting on shooting at 300 frames per second for key action beats to capture every droplet of digital blood and every muscle contraction. And this technical choice required massive amounts of lighting on the blue screen stages because the high-speed cameras are significantly less sensitive to light than standard cinema cameras, and the lighting rigs used for these sequences generated so much heat that actors could only perform for limited periods before needing breaks to avoid heat exhaustion. And the production's visual effects supervisor Chris Watts later revealed that some of the film's most striking images, including the shot of Leonidas throwing his spear through multiple Persian soldiers, were achieved through compositing techniques that combined live-action elements with fully digital characters and environments, and this hybrid approach allowed Snyder to achieve images that would have been physically impossible to capture in camera, while also giving the film its distinctive graphic novel texture that rejects photographic realism in favor of expressive distortion. The film's treatment of the Persian messenger at the beginning establishes the film's moral universe in miniature, as the messenger arrives at Sparta with demands for earth and water as symbols of submission, and Leonidas responds not with diplomatic negotiation, but with immediate violence, kicking the messenger into a bottomless well alongside his armed escort. And this scene has been analyzed by political theorists as an endorsement of preemptive violence against diplomatic representatives, which violates both historical norms of warfare and contemporary international law. And the film presents this act not as a moral failing, but as a demonstration of Spartan strength and integrity, since the messenger allegedly threatened Spartan women and children with enslavement. And the crowd of Spartan citizens watching the execution cheers enthusiastically, suggesting that the entire society endorses this extrajudicial killing. And the film never shows any Spartan questioning whether this response was proportionate or justified, and the visual composition of the scene places Leonidas at the center of the frame with the well behind him, so that the messenger's body disappears into darkness while Leonidas remains in golden light. And this visual coding reinforces the film's message that violence against enemies is not only acceptable but glorious. And the well itself becomes a recurring visual motif throughout the film, appearing again in the subplot involving Queen Gorgo and the traitor Theron. And critics have noted that the messenger's death by kicking is presented as darkly comic rather than horrifying, with the exaggerated sound effects and the messenger's surprised expression inviting laughter rather than moral reflection. And this tonal choice is characteristic of the film's overall approach to violence, which oscillates between solemn reverence for Spartan sacrifice and gleeful enjoyment of Persian suffering. And the scene ends with Leonidas declaring that Sparta will not submit, a line delivered with such conviction that the audience is invited to share his certainty despite knowing nothing about the strategic or moral complexities of the conflict. The character of Ephialtes represents the film's most complex and problematic engagement with disability, as he is portrayed as a tragic figure whose physical deformity prevents him from fulfilling his dream of becoming a Spartan warrior, and his parents are shown fleeing Sparta specifically to avoid his execution under Spartan eugenics laws that mandated the death of imperfect infants. Yet the film does not condemn these laws, but rather presents them as a harsh but necessary aspect of Spartan strength, and Ephialtes himself internalizes this value system, begging Leonidas for a chance to prove his worth despite his physical limitations. And Leonidas's rejection of Ephialtes is presented not as cruelty, but as military necessity, since the deformed arm cannot raise the shield high enough to maintain the phalanx formation. And the film invites the audience to sympathize with both Leonidas's tactical reasoning and Ephialtes' desperate desire for belonging. But it never suggests that Spartan society might be wrong to exclude disabled people from participation and honor, and Ephialtes' subsequent betrayal of the Spartans is framed as the inevitable consequence of his rejection, transforming disability into a narrative cause of treachery. And this trope has a long and ugly history in Western literature, from Shakespeare's Richard III to countless Hollywood villains whose physical differences signify moral corruption. And the film compounds this problem by having Ephialtes' deformity represented through makeup and prosthetics that emphasize his ugliness and difference from the sculpted Spartan bodies, and his face is covered in lesions and scars while his spine is visibly curved, making him visually repulsive to the audience as well as to the Spartan characters. And the film's sympathetic moments with Ephialtes, such as his tearful reaction to Leonidas's rejection, do not counteract this visual coding, but rather make it more troubling by suggesting that disabled people are inherently unstable and prone to destructive rage when denied acceptance by able-bodied society, and the historical Ephialtes was not a deformed Spartan, but a Greek from Trachis who betrayed the pass for a reward. And his physical description in ancient sources does not mention deformity, meaning the film's decision to make him disabled was a deliberate addition by Miller and Snyder. The Persian army's depiction draws on a century of Orientalist imagery in Western cinema, from the decadent villains of early silent films to the exoticized warriors of 1980s sword and sandal epics. And Rodrigo Santoro's performance as Xerxes was deliberately pitched to be otherworldly and sexually ambiguous, with the actor speaking in a deep, slow cadence that contrasts sharply with the urgent, clipped speech of the Spartans. And Xerxes' physical appearance includes extensive gold body piercings, elaborate eye makeup, and a voice that seems to emanate from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. And this presentation codes Xerxes as both divine and decadent, powerful but also corrupt. And the film's costume designers created multiple versions of Xerxes' costume, each more elaborate than the last, to emphasize his distance from Spartan simplicity. And the scene where Xerxes offers Leonidas a place at his side as a warlord of Persia is crucial because it reveals that the Persian king's strategy is not merely military but ideological, seeking to convert rather than simply destroy his enemies, and Leonidas's refusal of this offer, delivered with the line, "I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees," becomes the film's central moral statement, and the contrast between the two kings is emphasized through blocking and camera angles, with Xerxes often shot from below to make him appear giant and Leonidas shot at eye level to emphasize his humanity. And yet, Xerxes' apparent power is consistently undermined by his inability to defeat the Spartans in direct combat, as he never personally fights but instead sends waves of soldiers to die on Spartan spears. And this contrast between the fighting king and the commanding king reinforces the film's valorization of direct, physical courage over strategic distance. And Xerxes' eventual victory through betrayal rather than battlefield prowess is presented as a moral defeat for Persia, since he cannot claim to have beaten the Spartans fairly. And the film's final image of Xerxes watching Leonidas's body being carried away suggests that the Persian king understands he has lost something essential despite winning the battle. The film's soundtrack by Tyler Bates was composed under unusual circumstances, as Bates had only weeks to write and record the score after the original composer was dismissed from the project, and the resulting music blends traditional orchestral elements with electronic textures and ethnic percussion, creating a sound that is simultaneously ancient and contemporary, and the main theme, which plays during the film's opening credits and returns during key battle sequences, uses a simple, repeating melodic motif that builds in intensity through added instrumental layers and dynamic shifts, and this musical structure mirrors the film's narrative arc, which begins with exposition, builds through escalating conflict, and reaches its climax in Leonidas's final stand. And Bates incorporated recordings of actual Spartan military chants and Persian musical traditions, though both were heavily processed and stylized to fit the film's aesthetic, and the use of a male chorus during battle sequences evokes the historical practice of Spartan soldiers singing paeans before combat, but the film's chorus sounds more like contemporary film music than any historical reconstruction, and the soundtrack's most famous cue accompanies the "This is Sparta" sequence, using a sudden blast of brass and percussion that punctuates the physical violence of Leonidas's kick. And this moment has become one of the most imitated musical gestures in action cinema, appearing in trailers and parodies for years after the film's release, and Bates later revealed that some of the score's most effective moments were created by accident, as when a recording error produced an unexpected distortion that Snyder loved and insisted on keeping, and the soundtrack album was released in two versions, the original film score and a separate album of songs inspired by the film that featured contemporary rock and metal bands. And this dual-release strategy acknowledged the film's appeal to two different audiences, those interested in traditional film music, and those attracted to the film's aggressive, masculine energy, and the use of contemporary rock music in the film's marketing campaign, particularly the trailer's use of 9-inch nails, just like you imagined, helped establish the film's tone before audiences ever saw a frame of footage, and the final film includes no contemporary songs, relying entirely on Bates's orchestral score to carry its emotional weight, and this decision reflects Snyder's commitment to maintaining the film's diegetic integrity despite its many other departures from historical realism. The film's marketing campaign was a masterclass in building anticipation through selective revelation, as Warner Brothers released a series of teaser trailers that showcased the film's distinctive visual style without revealing major plot points. And these trailers were shown before other action films targeting the same young male demographic, creating a sense of event cinema months before the actual release date, and the decision to release the film in March rather than the traditional summer blockbuster season was a calculated risk that paid off enormously, as the film faced less competition from established franchises and benefited from pent-up audience demand for adult-oriented action cinema, and the film's iconic poster image, featuring Gerard Butler's Leonidas standing alone against a sky filled with Persian arrows, became one of the most recognizable movie posters of the decade, and this image perfectly encapsulates the film's central theme of heroic isolation against overwhelming odds. And the marketing materials consistently emphasized the film's graphic novel origins rather than its historical basis, allowing audiences to calibrate their expectations away from historical realism and toward stylized fantasy. And Snyder personally approved every trailer and television spot, ensuring that the marketing maintained visual and tonal consistency with the finished film, and the film's red band trailer, which included explicit violence and language, was released exclusively online and generated significant buzz among adult audiences who felt the film was speaking directly to them rather than to teenagers, and the film's official website included interactive features that allowed users to train as a Spartan warrior, further immersing potential viewers in the film's world before they ever bought a ticket. And the combination of innovative marketing, distinctive visuals, and positive word of mouth created a perfect storm of commercial success that surprised even the most optimistic industry analysts. And the film's opening weekend gross of nearly $71 million represented approximately the film's entire production budget, meaning the film was profitable before its second weekend in theaters. And this financial performance sent a clear message to Hollywood that audiences were hungry for stylized, violent visually distinctive action cinema. The film's treatment of religion and the divine is complex and somewhat contradictory, as the Spartans are shown honoring the gods through the Ephesus and the Oracle. But these religious authorities are depicted as corrupt, physically grotesque, and easily manipulated by Persian gold. And this depiction suggests a critique of organized religion as an obstacle to decisive action. Yet the film simultaneously invokes divine favor for the Spartan cause through natural phenomena like the storm that damages the Persian fleet, and the film never resolves this tension between skeptical critique of religious institutions and superstitious belief in divine intervention, leaving the audience uncertain whether the gods are real, indifferent, or merely figments of Spartan imagination, and the Ephesus themselves are portrayed as ancient, leprous figures who live in seclusion and communicate through a young oracle who writhes in what appears to be a drug-induced trance, and this depiction draws on classical sources that describe the oracle of Delphi breathing volcanic vapors to achieve her prophetic state, but the film exaggerates these elements for grotesque effect. And the scene where Leonidas confronts the Ephesus and demands their blessing for war is one of the film's few sequences that engages seriously with the political constraints on Spartan military action, as Leonidas cannot simply ignore the religious prohibition without losing legitimacy, and his decision to proceed anyway, taking only his personal bodyguard of 300 men, represents a compromise between outright defiance and complete submission. And the Ephesus corruption by Persian wealth is an invention of the film with no historical basis, serving to justify Leonidas's defiance by making the religious authorities morally compromised. And this narrative choice allows the film to have its ideological cake and eat it too, criticizing religious authority while still claiming divine favor for the Spartan cause. And the film's final battle includes a moment where Leonidas looks to the sky and seems to receive a vision of his homeland, suggesting that the gods or fate itself approve of his sacrifice. The film's depiction of the Arcadian allies and other Greek soldiers is notable for its condescension, as these non-Spartan Greeks are shown as less disciplined, less courageous, and less committed to the fight than Leonidas's 300. And their leader delivers a speech about the practical impossibility of victory that contrasts sharply with Leonidas's unwavering determination. And the Arcadians are depicted wearing less impressive armor and fighting with less coordination than the Spartans, visually reinforcing their inferior status. And when the Spartans perform their famous demonstration of pushing the Persian army off a cliff using only their shields, the Arcadians watch from a distance, unable to participate in this display of martial excellence. And Leonidas's decision to dismiss the Arcadians before the final stand is presented as both pragmatic and generous, since he acknowledges they are not prepared to die as the Spartans are. But the film's framing clearly invites the audience to judge the Arcadians as lesser men for accepting this dismissal. And the historical reality is that the Arcadians and other Greek allies fought and died alongside the Spartans at Thermopylae, with the Thespians in particular making a heroic last stand that rivals the Spartan sacrifice. And the film's erasure of these contributions serves its narrative need to present the battle as exclusively Spartan, reinforcing the film's broader argument about Spartan exceptionalism. And the few non-Spartan Greeks who remain with Leonidas for the final battle are given no lines and no individual identities, functioning as anonymous background figures who die without the film's attention. And this treatment reflects the film's broader indifference to anyone who does not embody Spartan values. And the historical Thespian contingent of approximately 700 men volunteered to stay with Leonidas despite knowing they would die, and their leader Demophilus reportedly declared that his soldiers would not abandon the Spartans, a moment of pan-Hellenic solidarity that the film completely ignores in favor of its Spartan-centric narrative. and the film's decision to minimize the role of other Greeks serves its ideological project of presenting the battle as a clash between pure Spartan virtue and corrupt Persian decadence, with no room for the messy complexities of inter-Greek alliance politics. The film's famous line, "Tonight we dine in hell," has become one of the most quoted pieces of movie dialogue from the 2000s, appearing everywhere from sports arenas to political commentary to internet memes, and the line encapsulates the film's attitude toward death as not something to be feared, but rather embraced as the ultimate expression of masculine courage. And the phrase transforms death from an ending into a continuation, suggesting that the Spartans will continue to exist in some form after their physical demise, and this transformation of death into dinner, of the afterlife into a banquet hall, domesticates mortality and makes it almost appealing. And the line is delivered by Gerard Butler with a combination of grim determination and dark humor that perfectly captures the film's tonal balancing act between solemn tragedy and gleeful violence. And the line's effectiveness depends on the contrast between the mundane act of dining and the extraordinary circumstances of the final stand, creating a cognitive dissonance that is both funny and profound. And the line has been analyzed by linguists as an example of how simple vocabulary combined with unexpected context can create lasting cultural impact, as none of the individual words are remarkable, but their combination is unforgettable. And the line's popularity has led to countless variations and parodies, from "Tonight we dine in your mom's basement" to more reverent adaptations in subsequent war films, and the historical Spartans did have a reputation for dry, ironic humor in the face of death, with the famous response to the news that Persian arrows would blot out the sun being, "Then we will fight in the shade," a line the film includes in another scene. And "Tonight we dine in hell" is very much in this tradition of laconic Spartan wit, even if the specific phrasing is a modern invention. And the line's placement at the film's emotional climax, just before Leonidas launches his final attack, gives it maximum rhetorical force, and the audience's knowledge that Leonidas will indeed die within moments adds weight to the line's bravado, transforming it from empty machismo into genuine courage. And the line has been criticized by some as glorifying death in ways that are morally problematic, particularly given the film's release during an actual war. But its defenders argue that the line is about accepting mortality rather than seeking death, a crucial distinction that is often lost in heated debates about the film's politics. The film's portrayal of Spartan military training, known as the agoge, is depicted through flashbacks and dialogue references that emphasize its brutality and effectiveness, showing young Spartans being sent into the wilderness with minimal equipment to survive against wild animals and harsh weather. And this training is presented as the source of Spartan military superiority, creating warriors who feel no pain, fear no enemy, and accept death as a natural part of life. And the film's version of the agoge includes elements that historical sources confirm, such as deliberate undefeating to accustom Spartans to hunger and the requirement that they steal food to develop cunning. But the film omits other historical aspects, such as the institutionalized pederasty that was central to Spartan education. And this omission is significant because it allows the film to present Spartan masculinity as purely martial rather than sexually complex, and the relationship between Leonidas and his father is depicted as distant but respectful, with the elder king's death during Leonidas's childhood serving as motivation for the young prince to prove himself. And the film's depiction of Spartan women's role in the agoge is limited to a single line about mothers telling their sons to return with their shield or on it. But historically, Spartan women participated actively in the training of young men, and the film's emphasis on physical perfection as the goal of the agoge reflects contemporary fitness culture more than ancient Spartan values, as the sculpted bodies of the actors were achieved through modern weight training and diet rather than the calisthenics and wrestling of the historical agoge. And the film's training sequences were choreographed to emphasize the development of collective discipline alongside individual strength, showing young Spartans learning to fight in formation as well as to hunt alone. And the actor who plays the young Leonidas underwent a modified version of the same physical training as the adult cast, though scaled for his age and size. And the film's depiction of the agoge has been criticized by historians for presenting Spartan child-rearing practices without context or critique, effectively endorsing a system that involved state-sanctioned violence against children. And the film's defenders note that the agoge is presented as part of Dilios's narration, meaning it is filtered through a Spartan perspective that would naturally celebrate these practices. The film's sound design, supervised by Scott Hecker, deserves detailed analysis because it creates much of the film's visceral impact without drawing attention to itself, and the distinctive sound of Spartan spears penetrating Persian bodies was created by combining the sound of a knife entering meat with the sound of a wet towel being struck against a hard surface, producing a noise that is both organic and slightly artificial. And the Persian army's approach is announced by a deep, rhythmic drumming that builds in volume and complexity as the enemy draws nearer, creating a sense of inexorable advance that puts the audience in the Spartans' psychological position. And the Spartan shields produce a resonant, almost musical tone when struck by Persian arrows, a sound effect achieved by recording actual bronze shields being hit with various objects and then processing the recordings to emphasize certain frequencies. And the film's dialogue was recorded in post-production through automated dialogue replacement for most scenes because the blue-screen shooting environment made on-set audio unusable. And this gave Butler and the other actors the opportunity to re-record their lines after seeing the finished visual effects, allowing them to match their vocal performances to the final imagery. And the film's use of silence is as important as its use of sound, with key moments such as Leonidas's contemplation before battle or the final arrow storm being accompanied by minimal sound, forcing the audience to focus on the visuals. And the Persian war cries and battle chants were created by layering recordings of multiple languages, including Farsi, Arabic, and invented vocalizations, to create an otherworldly quality that suggests the Persians are not fully human. And the sound of Xerxes' voice was processed with subtle reverberation and pitch modulation to make it seem to come from everywhere at once, emphasizing his godlike pretensions. And the film's climactic moment when Leonidas throws his spear at Xerxes is accompanied by a sudden silence followed by the enormous sound of the spear striking the Persian king's throne, a dynamic contrast that makes the moment feel even more impactful. And the sound design for the film's digital blood was deliberately unrealistic, with each blood spray accompanied by a distinct whoosh or spatter sound that emphasizes the artificiality of the violence. And this choice aligns with the film's overall rejection of realism in favor of stylized spectacle. And the film's final shot, of Leonidas's body being carried away, is accompanied by a slow, mournful variation of the main theme that brings the emotional arc to a close. The film's costume design, supervised by Michael Wilkinson, created visual templates for an entire subgenre of historical action cinema, with the Spartans wearing essentially leather briefs, bronze helmets, and crimson capes, and this minimalist approach to Spartan armor was a deliberate choice to emphasize the actors' physiques, as Wilkinson later admitted in interviews. And the decision to have the Spartans fight bare-chested has no historical basis, as actual Spartan hoplites wore bronze breastplates that covered their torsos. But the film's designers argued that historical accuracy would have obscured the physical transformations achieved by the cast, and the Spartan helmets were designed based on historical Corinthian models, but modified to allow more of the actors' faces to be visible, ensuring that audience members could identify individual Spartans during battle sequences. And the crimson capes were made from a specially developed fabric that caught the digital wind. Effects used throughout the film, creating flowing, dramatic silhouettes against the desaturated backgrounds, and the Persian costume designs drew on multiple historical sources, including Achaemenid Persian art, but exaggerated every element to create a sense of decadent excess, with Xerxes wearing more than 40 pounds of gold-body jewelry in his final costume. And the Immortals' masks were designed to evoke both Japanese samurai helmets and horror movie villains, creating a sense of uncanny threat that transcends specific cultural reference points. And the Persian court costumes included elaborate headdresses, flowing silk robes, and extensive facial piercings, all designed to contrast with Spartan simplicity and restraint. And the film's costume department created over 800 individual costumes for the Persian army, though many were only seen briefly or were fully replaced by digital versions in the final film. And the decision to have the Spartan characters appear nearly nude throughout the film was controversial even before release, with some critics accusing the film of fetishizing the male body in ways that would have been criticized if applied to female characters. And Wilkinson has defended the costume choices as appropriate to the film's graphic novel aesthetic, arguing that realism was never the goal, and the film's influence on costume design can be seen in subsequent historical epics, from Clash of the Titans to Immortals, all of which adopted similarly minimalist approaches to Greek armor. And the film's costumes have been exhibited in museums alongside actual ancient Greek armor, creating an interesting juxtaposition between historical artifact and cinematic imagination. The film's editing, supervised by William Hoy, uses rhythm and pacing to control audience emotion across the film's runtime, with action sequences edited to match the beat of Tyler Bates's score, creating a seamless integration of image and sound that intensifies the visceral impact of violence. And the film's famous slow-motion sequences are intercut with real-time action to create a dynamic rhythm that prevents the slow motion from becoming monotonous, and the film's editor has revealed that Snyder shot significantly more footage than necessary for most scenes, allowing the editing team to select the best performances and most striking images from multiple takes, and the film's opening sequence, depicting the battle's aftermath and then flashing back to its beginning, required complex editorial decisions to ensure that the temporal jumps were clear to audiences without being jarring. And the film's use of cross-cutting between the battle at Thermopylae and the political intrigue in Sparta creates narrative tension by suggesting that events in Sparta could determine the outcome of the battle, even though the audience knows historically that no reinforcements arrived in time. And the film's climactic sequence, showing Leonidas's final moments intercut with Gorgo's speech to the Spartan council, is a masterclass in parallel editing, with each cut building emotional intensity toward the dual climaxes of Leonidas's death and Gorgo's political victory. And the film's editor has noted that the final battle sequence required more than 6 months to complete because of the sheer number of visual effects shots that needed to be integrated with live-action footage, and the film's transition from the battle to the final narration, in which Dilios describes the Spartans' legacy, required careful calibration to avoid feeling abrupt or preachy. And the film's use of fade-to-black transitions between major sections gives the film an epic, chapter-like structure that recalls classical literature. And the editing team worked closely with the visual effects department to ensure that cuts aligned with the completion of digital elements, sometimes adjusting the timing of a cut by single frames to achieve the desired emotional impact. And the film's final shot, a slow fade from Leonidas's face to Dilios's face as he leads the charge at Plataea, visually unites the film's two narrative threads and suggests that Leonidas lives on through Dilios's storytelling. The film's depiction of Spartan marriage and domestic life is limited but significant, showing Leonidas and Gorgo as a couple who respect each other as equals within the constraints of Spartan gender roles, and their farewell scene, in which Gorgo tells Leonidas to return with his shield or on it, is one of the film's few moments of genuine emotional vulnerability. And the film suggests that Spartan women are uniquely empowered compared to other Greek women, with Gorgo moving freely through public spaces and speaking her mind to male leaders, and this depiction reflects historical reality to some extent, as Spartan women did enjoy more freedom than their Athenian counterparts, but the film exaggerates this freedom to make Gorgo a more compelling character. And the film includes a brief scene of Leonidas and Gorgo in their bedroom, discussing the coming war while their son sleeps nearby. And this domestic interlude humanizes Leonidas before the violence to come, making his eventual death more emotionally resonant. And the film's treatment of Spartan childhood is limited to the flashback sequences showing Leonidas's training, suggesting that Spartan children were raised more by the state than by their parents, and the relationship between Leonidas and his son is barely developed, with the boy appearing only in the bedroom scene and then disappearing from the narrative entirely. And this omission is significant because the historical Leonidas was succeeded by his son Pleistarchus, who was still a child at the time of Thermopylae, and the film's decision to minimize the son's role reflects its focus on martial glory rather than familial legacy. And the film's depiction of Spartan women other than Gorgo is limited to anonymous background figures who cheer the army's departure and mourn their return. And this lack of individualization reinforces the film's focus on its male protagonists at the expense of any broader social context. And the film's treatment of Gorgo's political role has been both praised and criticized, with some viewers appreciating the inclusion of a strong female character in a genre that often excludes women entirely, while others find her subplot gratuitous and exploitative. And the historical Gorgo was known for her political wisdom, including correctly interpreting an oracular response that others misunderstood. And the film's version of Gorgo shares this intelligence, but channels it primarily into violent action rather than verbal persuasion. The film's use of voiceover narration by Dilios is a crucial structural element that transforms the entire film into a work of oral history, And this narrative framing excuses many of the film's historical inaccuracies by suggesting that they are the result of Dilios's embellishments rather than the filmmaker's ignorance. And the voiceover is delivered in a distinctive cadence that mixes contemporary English idioms with archaic phrasing, creating a sense of timelessness that suits the film's mythic ambitions, and David Wenham's vocal performance shifts register depending on the content of the scene, becoming more formal during expository passages and more intimate during moments of personal reflection. And the film occasionally interrupts the voiceover to show Dilios addressing his audience of Spartan soldiers, reminding viewers that the story is being told aloud in a specific context with a specific persuasive purpose, and this meta-narrative awareness is one of the film's most sophisticated features, acknowledging its own status as propaganda while still functioning as propaganda. And the voiceover provides crucial information that would otherwise require lengthy expository scenes, such as the political situation in Sparta and the strategic importance of Thermopylae. And the film's use of voiceover has been compared to classical epic poetry, particularly Homer's Iliad, which also frames its narrative as a story being told to an audience, and the voiceover allows the film to include moments of interiority that would be impossible to convey through action alone, such as Leonidas's private thoughts before battle. And the film's voiceover was recorded after the visual effects were completed, allowing Wenham to match his vocal performance to the finished imagery, and the relationship between what Dilios says and what the audience sees is sometimes contradictory, with Dilios claiming that the Spartans never retreated while the film shows them occasionally falling back to regroup, and these contradictions can be interpreted as evidence of Dilios's unreliability as a narrator, though the film never explicitly acknowledges them, and the voiceover's final lines, describing the Spartan dead as having achieved immortality through the story of their sacrifice, explicitly state the film's central thesis that narrative itself is the only true form of immortality. And this self-reflexive theme is rare in action cinema, which typically avoids drawing attention to its own status as storytelling. The film's depiction of the Persian army's size is deliberately exaggerated for dramatic effect, with Dilios claiming that the Persian force numbers in the millions, a figure that would have been logistically impossible for ancient supply chains to support. And the film visualizes this claim through endless digital crowds that stretch to the horizon in every direction, creating a sense of overwhelming numerical superiority that makes the Spartan stand seem even more heroic and the historical Persian army at Thermopylae probably numbered between 100,000 and 300,000 soldiers, still vastly outnumbering the Greeks, but far fewer than the film's implied millions. And the film's decision to exaggerate the Persian numbers serves its thematic purpose of presenting the Spartans as impossible underdogs, and the film's crowd simulation technology, developed specifically for this production, allowed the visual effects team to create individual variations in movement, an appearance for each digital soldier, avoiding the unnaturally uniform crowds that plagued earlier films, and the sheer scale of the digital Persian army required massive computing resources, with render times for individual frames sometimes exceeding 24 hours, and the film's depiction of the Persian army as a disorganized, chaotic horde contrasts sharply with the disciplined, coordinated Spartans, reinforcing the film's argument that Western military values are superior to Eastern ones, and the film includes brief glimpses of Persian camp life, showing soldiers gambling, drinking, and engaging in what the film implies are decadent and immoral activities, and these glimpses are always presented through the eyes of Spartan scouts, ensuring that the audience shares the Spartans' contemptuous perspective, and the film's treatment of the Persian army's logistics is completely ignored, as the film has no interest in how Xerxes feeds or supplies his massive force, focusing instead on the visual spectacle of endless soldiers marching toward the hot gates. And the film's final battle sequence shows the Persian army continuing to attack despite suffering catastrophic losses, a depiction that strains credibility even within the film's mythologized framework, and the historical Persians did eventually break through the Spartan defense, but only after discovering the mountain path that allowed them to flank the Greek position, and the film's emphasis on Persian numerical superiority, rather than tactical ingenuity, reflects its broader ideological project of presenting the Persian threat as purely quantitative rather than qualitative. The film's treatment of the Spartan shield, or aspes, is almost reverent, with the shield functioning as both a practical weapon and a symbolic representation of Spartan identity. And the film repeatedly shows Spartans using their shields to push enemies off cliffs, block volleys of arrows, and smash Persian faces. emphasizing the shield's offensive as well as defensive capabilities, and the famous Spartan law that a warrior must return with his shield or on it is explicitly referenced in the film, with Gorgo telling Leonidas to return with his shield or on it, and this law reflected the practical reality that a shield was too large to run with, so abandoning it meant fleeing the battlefield. And the film shows the Spartans carrying their shields at all times, even when sleeping or eating, reinforcing the idea that the shield is an extension of the warrior's body. And the film's final image of Leonidas includes a close-up of his shield, covered in arrows but still intact, symbolizing his refusal to retreat even in death, and the shields of fallen Spartans are shown being collected by their comrades, emphasizing the importance of recovering the bodies and equipment of the dead. And the film's depiction of the phalanx formation centers on the interlocking of shields, with each Spartan's shield protecting not only himself but also the man to his left, and this interdependence is presented as the source of Spartan strength, requiring trust and discipline that the Persians cannot match, and the film's decision to have the Spartans fight without significant body armor makes the shield even more crucial, as it is often the only thing protecting them from Persian arrows and spears. And the historical Spartan shield was made of wood with a bronze facing, weighing approximately 15 pounds, and the film's props were designed to match this weight, requiring the actors to build significant upper body strength simply to carry them through long shooting days, and the shield's distinctive lambda symbol, representing Lacedaemon, the region of Sparta, is prominently displayed on every Spartan shield, visually identifying the warriors as part of a specific political community. And the film's use of the shield as a symbol extends to the political subplot, where Gorgo uses a shield to kill Theron, suggesting that Spartan women are as capable with the shield as Spartan men. The film's release on home video included an extensive making-of documentary that revealed many of the production secrets behind the film's distinctive look, including the use of a virtual camera that allowed Snyder to preview digital environments before they were built, and this documentary showed the actors performing on nearly empty sound stages, surrounded by blue screens and marked with tape to indicate where digital elements would later appear, and the film's commentary track featuring Snyder and Miller discussing the production together provides valuable insight into their creative collaboration, with Miller expressing satisfaction at how faithfully his graphic novel had been adapted, and Snyder revealing that he fought with studio executives to maintain the film's R rating, arguing that a PG-13 version would have compromised the visceral impact of the violence. And the home video release included deleted scenes that were cut from the theatrical version for pacing reasons, including an extended sequence showing the Persian court in greater detail. And these deleted scenes reveal that the film originally contained more explicit political commentary, with Xerxes delivering a speech about the inevitability of Persian dominance that was removed to streamline the narrative, and the film's Blu-ray release was among the first to demonstrate the format's potential for showcasing high contrast, stylized imagery, with the desaturated color palette and deep blacks looking particularly striking in high definition, and the film's home video sales were enormous, eventually surpassing the theatrical revenue and cementing the film's status as a profitable franchise. And the making-of documentary revealed that the film's famous "This is Sparta" kick required more than 50 takes to get right, with Butler kicking the same actor repeatedly until both were exhausted. And the documentary also showed the physical therapy required by cast members after production ended, with several actors requiring surgery to repair injuries sustained during the shoot. And the film's legacy on home video includes a director's cut that adds approximately 10 minutes of footage, mostly extending existing battle sequences rather than adding new scenes, and this director's cut has become the preferred version for many fans, despite Snyder's statement that the theatrical cut represents his true vision for the film. The film's influence on subsequent action cinema extends beyond visual style to narrative structure, as many later films adopted the small force against impossible odds template that 300 perfected, and the film's success helped greenlight other stylized historical action films such as The Eagle and Centurion, both of which borrowed elements of the 300 aesthetic while telling different stories. And the film's depiction of slow-motion violence as beautiful rather than horrific influenced a generation of action directors, including Chad Stahelski of the John Wick series, who has cited 300 as an influence on his approach to choreographed violence, and the film's use of color grading to establish mood and theme became standard practice in action cinema, with even relatively realistic films adopting desaturated palettes and selective color retention. and the film's success demonstrated that R-rated action films could be blockbuster hits, encouraging studios to take risks on adult-oriented genre films that might previously have been considered too niche, and the film's treatment of male bodies as objects of visual pleasure, while controversial, opened the door for more explicit celebration of male physicality in action cinema, with later films featuring shirtless male leads as a matter of course, and the film's marketing campaign, which emphasized visual spectacle over star power, became a template for launching unknown directors and actors, proving that a distinctive visual style could be more valuable than famous faces. And the film's use of voiceover narration as a framing device was imitated by numerous subsequent films, though few matched the effectiveness of Dilios's laconic delivery. And the film's influence can even be seen in non-action genres, with romantic comedies and dramas adopting desaturated color palettes and high-contrast lighting in the years following the film's release. And the film's impact on video game design was particularly pronounced, with many games adopting the 300 aesthetic for their cutscenes and promotional materials. And the film's legacy is complex because its influence extends to films that reject its politics while adopting its techniques, demonstrating that visual style can be separated from ideological content even when the original film tightly integrated them. The film's representation of Persian wealth and opulence functions as a direct visual counterpoint to Spartan austerity, with every Persian tent, garment, and weapon adorned with gold, jewels, and elaborate patterns that suggest moral decay rather than simple prosperity. And this visual strategy draws on a long tradition in Western art of associating Eastern luxury with weakness and corruption, while associating Western simplicity with virtue and strength. And the film's production designers filled the Persian court scenes with silks, furs, and precious metals that catch the light in ways that the Spartan scenes deliberately avoid, creating a sense of visual overload that mirrors what the film presents as Persian moral overload. And the contrast between the golden simplicity of Spartan armor and the gaudy excess of Persian decoration reinforces the film's central ideological opposition between disciplined restraint and decadent indulgence. And the film's Persian characters are shown eating elaborate meals reclining on couches while being fanned by servants, while the Spartans eat simple rations while standing ready for battle. And this contrast in dining practices reflects ancient Greek stereotypes about Persian softness, stereotypes that the film amplifies for contemporary audiences. And the historical Persians did have elaborate court rituals and enjoyed luxury goods. But these practices were signs of civilization and stability, rather than decadence within their own cultural framework. And the film's refusal to present Persian culture on its own terms, instead filtering everything through Spartan eyes, represents a form of cultural imperialism that critics have identified as the film's most troubling aspect. And the film's Persian gold is repeatedly shown as a corrupting influence, bribing the Ephyrs and the traitor Theron, suggesting that Eastern wealth inevitably undermines Western virtue. And this theme of corrupting gold has biblical resonances, evoking the golden calf and other Old Testament warnings about the dangers of material wealth. And the film's final shot of Xerxes includes a lingering view of his golden throne and jewelry, suggesting that even in victory he remains trapped in his gilded cage, unable to achieve the authentic freedom that the Spartans found in death. The film's treatment of the Spartan concept of Spartan as an adjective meaning simple, frugal, and severe is explicitly performed through every aspect of production design, with the Spartan camp containing no luxuries, no decorations, and no comforts beyond the bare minimum required for survival. And this visual minimalism extends to the Spartan dialogue, which is famously laconic, with Leonidas delivering speeches that are short, direct, and memorable rather than elaborate and rhetorical. And the film's Spartan characters never complain about their conditions, never express doubt about their mission, and never question their leaders, embodying the ideal of emotional restraint that the film presents as the core of Spartan virtue. And the contrast between Spartan emotional restraint and Persian emotional expressiveness is most visible in the scene where the Persian emissary delivers his demands, with the emissary using florid, elaborate language while Leonidas responds with a single word followed by a kick. And this contrast in communication styles reinforces the film's broader argument about Western directness versus Eastern artifice. And the film's Spartan characters are shown bathing in cold water, sleeping on hard ground, and eating minimal food, all presented as sources of strength rather than deprivation. And the film's visual emphasis on Spartan physical perfection suggests that this austerity produces superior bodies as well as superior characters, and the Historical Spartans did practice a famously austere lifestyle, with black broth, coarse cloaks, and communal mess halls, but the film exaggerates these practices to mythic proportions, and the film's presentation of Spartan austerity as admirable rather than merely necessary reflects contemporary cultural anxieties about consumerism and comfort, suggesting that modern audiences sense something valuable has been lost in the transition to luxurious living, and the film's Spartan characters never express any desire for the luxuries that surround the Persians, not even curiosity about what they might be missing, and this complete absence of temptation makes the Spartans seem almost superhuman, reinforcing their status as mythic heroes rather than realistic historical figures. And the film's final sequence shows the Spartans preparing for death without any last requests or regrets, accepting their fate with the same emotional restraint they showed throughout the battle, and this consistency of character is the film's greatest artistic achievement, creating protagonists who embody their values so completely that they transcend individuality and become symbols. The film's relationship to classical Greek art and literature is complex because it draws on ancient sources while deliberately transforming them for modern audiences, and the film's visual depiction of Spartan warriors, with their sculpted bodies and heroic poses, directly references classical Greek sculpture, particularly the idealized male nudes of the 5th century BCE, and the film's frequent use of slow motion to capture Spartans in moments of violent action creates tableaus that resemble the metopes of the Parthenon, which depicted Greeks fighting Amazons and centaurs, and the film's framing of Leonidas as a tragic hero who knowingly marches to his death evokes the classical concept of kalos thanatos, the beautiful death that brings eternal glory, and the film's dialogue includes direct references to Homer, with Dilios comparing the Spartans to the heroes of the Trojan War, explicitly placing Thermopylae within the tradition of Greek epic poetry, and the film's treatment of the Persian Wars as a clash between freedom and slavery draws on Herodotus's Histories, the primary ancient source for the battle, which also presents the conflict in civilizational terms, and the film's depiction of the Ephors and the Oracle draws on ancient Greek religious practices, though the film exaggerates their corruption for dramatic effect, and the film's use of a narrator who addresses an audience of warriors directly echoes the opening of Homer's Iliad, which begins with an invocation to the muse and a statement of its theme, and the film's structure, with its extended flashbacks and shifting temporal perspectives, owes more to classical epic than to conventional screenwriting, and the film's willingness to include supernatural elements, such as Xerxes' godlike powers and the various monsters in the Persian army, aligns it more closely with Homeric epic than with historical reconstruction. And the film's treatment of its heroes as larger-than-life figures who transcend ordinary human limitations is thoroughly consistent with ancient Greek literary traditions.